welcome back to Words with Friends. This week, I'm asking the question, what's the worst trip you've ever been on? Luke, worst trip?
I went to Colorado with my cousin, and it was like unexpectedly snowed like 4 feet.
Okay.
So we spent like half of the trip stuck in a hotel room.
Did you go there thinking you would ski or?
No, just to go
Okay.
see Denver, go to some basketball games, see some sights. But yeah, it just...
Then the worst trip you never went on was Hawaii.
Right.
You were supposed to go.
Supposed to go.
Oh,
That's
I'm
mean.
sorry, that was
That's
funny.
mean.
Well, it would have been the worst trip. That would have been the best trip I've never been on.
That's true. The best trip you've never been on. My worst trip, I said I would help out a quartet, a Southern Gospel quartet, and sing for them. And we drove out to first Lubbock and then out to nowhere, New Mexico. And we were supposed to sing at a couple of different engagements. And one got canceled and one, they used another guy instead of me it was so bad. Like we wound up literally singing in a gravel driveway on a flatbed truck to
Nice.
I think they were truck drivers. Nice people. It kept getting so bad very quickly that all I could do was laugh. And so that was actually a good thing. It was the worst trip and best trip. Best worst trip I've ever been on. What about you, Miss Leah?
Mine, so the trip on the whole was not bad, but it was just much too small, much too close quarters. It was with my husband's family. So there are 8 of us, his sister, husband, 2 kids, his parents, and us, in a 2-bedroom condo. And it was just for like 5 days. And it was just too many of us and we all got sick. So that was great.
So we're talking about road trips, and I found this piece that I wrote years ago. I mean, this was before preaching. This was still youth ministry days. And so here's the piece. You ready? Moses is on the mother of all road trips. I've compared it to a youth group trip with whiny and complaining kids, where kids who were just singing Blue Skies and Rainbows, that's how old this piece is, are now fighting and bickering and putting toothpaste in the ear of the person sleeping next to them. You've done that.
Who has access to toothpaste in the car?
You come prepared.
Mm.
And I put this in for this week. Last week we talked about God coming into the presence of the tabernacle. And so I said God really wanted to go camping with his kids. And I think you all know how I feel about camping. It's just rich people acting poor. If I'm ever convicted of a major crime and given the choice between prison and camping, I choose prison every time. Lock me up, throw away the key, but please don't make me sleep in a tent. Oh!
So he's really excited for Trek. That's what he's saying.
Trek is a whole other story. This week we moved from Sinai to the desert and arrived on the edge of the promised land. That's the story of the book of Numbers. We find the same selfish people with the same selfish attitude and the same selfish cries. If only we had died in Egypt. It was great to be a slave. Can you hear a kid saying that? Right. Oh, just kill me now. We have to go to a museum. Right. Oh, this is terrible. McDonald's again. And you expect to hear God say at any time, that could be arranged. I'll turn this nation right around and we'll go back to Egypt, which is probably what he should have done. God's deliverance of his people was astonishing. Supernatural plagues, miraculous rescue through the Red Sea, a cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night, water from the rock, bread from heaven, freedom. They've seen and tasted and experienced amazing things. They had learned a lot about God, but God wanted more. What's God doing in the book of Numbers? If you're like, how much did you know, honestly, about Numbers before you watched the video?
I knew it counted people.
Yes.
Pretty
much
you weren't
that.
sure that all the wilderness wanderings were in there, were you?
Right.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. Neither was I. I stay away from Numbers like I do Leviticus.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a hint about the book of Numbers. It's more than a head count. It's more than a census. So God's not just taking roll.
Although he's also doing that.
He's doing that as well. So let's watch this and we'll come back.
The book of Numbers gets overlooked, partly because it has a really boring name.
Which is a shame. In the Hebrew tradition, the book's name is Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. And it's an epic travelogue about Israel's journey through the desert on their way to the land promised to Abraham.
Now, this pilgrimage should only take about 2 weeks on foot.
But instead, it takes them about 40 years.
That's crazy. It's practically half of someone's lifetime.
Yeah, it's a very long camping trip with lots of interesting stories. But let's remember, it's most helpful to back up and start with how this book is designed.
Right.
So the book is broken up into 5 sections. There are 3 wilderness locations, broken up by 2 road trips that link all the pieces together.
The first wilderness section is Mount Sinai, right here on the map.
And then in the second section, they travel to a region called Perron.
A whole bunch of things happen here in the wilderness of Perron.
And then in this 4th section is Israel's road trip to Moab.
The book ends with a large section in the wilderness of Moab, right across the Jordan River from the Promised Land.
Now, through all of these sections, the storyline just flows like a gripping dramatic movie. Everything starts great, but then the trip goes horribly wrong, and it all ends with the final redemptive moment, the surprising act of God's grace.
So let's jump into this story. It all begins at the wilderness at Mount Sinai, and we've become really familiar with this mountain.
Yeah, if you remember, Israel came here after Egypt, and they formed a covenant with God here, got the 10 Commandments here, built the tabernacle here, and they've been at this mountain for 1 full year.
And now they take a census to number the people as they prepare to leave.
Right, and they're given these instructions for how to organize all those people in the camp. God's presence in the tabernacle, and then the tribe of Levi and the priests around it, and then the rest of the tribes around them. And this pattern, it's this visual symbol for how God's holiness is at the center of their existence as a people.
And they're told that when the cloud of God's presence moves, they're to pack up and travel with it.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant is carried by the Levites out in front, and then the tribe of Judah, and on and on. And this order is also a symbol for how God's holy presence is their leader and guide through the wilderness.
We begin the second section of the book with enthusiasm as they leave Mount Sinai and travel up to Perron. God's with them, everything's organized. This is going to be great.
But it's not great. After just 3 days on the road, the people are complaining about their hunger and thirst, and then even Moses' brother and sister start bad-mouthing him in front of all the people.
Not a great start. But now we're into the third section, the wilderness of Perron. This is where they send the 12 spies to scout out the Promised Land. 2 of those spies come back, and they're really optimistic.
But the other 10 are freaked out, and they don't trust God, and they go around saying, we're going to get annihilated in there. And so they start a mutiny, and they try to appoint a new leader who's going to take all the people back to Egypt. And so basically, they are refusing to go into the Promised Land, and God honors their choice. He says that this generation is going to wander for 40 years and die in the wilderness, and only their kids will get to enter the Promised Land.
You know, this story here gets brought up many times in the Bible by different authors.
Yeah, and it always serves as a reminder that while God remains faithful to his people and his promises, he will honor their choices. He'll let them waste their whole lives if they choose to live in rebellion.
Okay, so the trip's been a disaster so far.
And it gets worse here in this 4th section as they're traveling to Moab. Even Moses has a moment of rebellion and is disqualified from entering the Promised Land. Then there's another rebellion among the people that results in this snake attack. And what makes all these rebellions even worse is that every step of the way, God has been providing. He's been offering forgiveness. He's been giving them food and water and this crazy stuff called manna.
Yeah, what is that stuff?
Yeah, no idea. But in spite of all this, they keep complaining, and they say that they wish they had died in slavery in Egypt.
If I was God, I would just give up on these guys.
You would think. But that's what makes this story in the final section so surprising. Israel has just arrived in Moab, and the king of Moab, he's freaked out that this huge group of people is traveling through his land. So he hires this pagan sorcerer named Balaam to pronounce curses on them.
This guy means business.
Yeah, and so Balaam, he says, okay, I'm going to pray to the Hebrew God, and let's see what happens. And 3 different times he attempts to curse them, but each time he finds that he can utter only blessing. Most surprising is the last blessing, where he prophesies that out of Israel will rise a victorious king. And this king is somehow going to be connected to God's promise to Abraham to bless all nations through this family. So here's Israel rebelling down in the camp, totally unaware that up in the hills, God is protecting and even blessing them.
The book ends here in Moab. Israel's getting ready to go into the Promised Land. They count up everyone again, just like at the beginning. They're leaving the old generation behind, including Moses.
But before they leave Moses, he gives them his last words of warning and wisdom. And that speech is what the next book, Deuteronomy, is all about.
All right, and we're back. So what struck you? What was the thing you saw in the video that you thought, didn't know that? That was interesting.
Leah.
It's just funny because I see the Israelites as toddlers, and maybe that's because I have a toddler that I give everything to. Like, physically, I give you everything you need to survive.
Oh, was it not enough that I birthed you?
No. Oh, also that. But, no, it's always, I don't want what you gave me right now. I want what you gave me 10 minutes ago that I completely forgot about, that you threw away. I want that now.
Make mental note of that.
Yeah, I think it's the anger and the resentment of the people towards God that it eventually builds up to where it reaches Moses. And like even Moses is now to the point where he's like, maybe you guys were right all along.
Right.
Maybe we should have been making metal cows, like he just gets so tired of it that he now even loses that privilege.
Right.
I don't know if you ever heard the word tabernacle used as a verb. That God wants to come and tabernacle with his people. This is a big deal. But it's different what God wants and what the people want. He wants to take up residence in their hearts.
Right.
They just want his power to be nearby.
Right.
He wants intimacy. They want access. They want to be able to play the God card anytime. He wanted them to change. They just want progress. They want to be like the other nations. They want to be great. He wanted to transform them. They just want to be successful. Does that ring true with any church-going people today? Like, you think...
I feel like that's everybody.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody wants to be I'm the better Christian. I show up on Wednesday, Sunday to make myself look good in front of all these people so I can act like a terrible person during the week.
Well, or even the idea of this is my path to success, that the reason for following God is so that this will go well with us. And he's saying, no. It's because I want you to be my people.
Right.
I want you to be transformed and consecrated and holy and all those great words that we've talked about. I said God delivers his people through a series of miracles. He defeats their enemies. He gives them a covenant and a set of laws to make them a chosen nation, provide them a land of promise. And this is all like the parallel for what you do as a parent and what God does for his people.
Yeah.
It's something. And it should go like this. God speaks, people listen, God delivers, they believe, God provides, people trust. That's not the story. That's not the story at all of how it goes.
Right.
And they forget, they're so quick to forget. It's the what have you done for me lately?
Right.
And let's listen to their complaints. Are you ready? They're the same complaints as you will hear from your children.
Yes.
On a road trip. The first one is, I'm tired. Are we there yet? Luke, read for us Numbers 11.
Now the people complained about their hardships in the hearing of the Lord. And when he heard them, his anger was aroused. Then fire from the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp. When the people cried out to Moses, he prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. So the people called that place Taberah, because fire from the Lord had burned among them.
All right. Couple of questions about this. One, they complain about God in his hearing.
Right.
And I'm like, where would they have been that he would have been like, oh,
Right.
like I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Too far.
And it's a very quick response. They complain, and he's angry. What is it about this kind of complaint? Because to say, oh, the sun's so hot today, or this work is really hard, there's got to be something, a difference. Maybe I'll say it this way. What's the difference between whining and lamenting? That a lament is, this is a hard thing. This is a burden that I'm bearing. This is a crisis that I'm going through. But a whine is different, and I feel like they're whining here. So what are they complaining about? What's at the heart of their complaints?
I feel like to answer your complaint lament, I feel like the lament is, God, be here with me through this.
Yes.
Not, God, take this from me.
Yes.
This is I wish I was never born.
Yeah.
You are the worst parents
Yes.
ever.
Yeah.
I'm running away.
Yeah.
Okay. And then God disciplines them.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not a swat on the hiney.
No.
First time I've used hiney in a Bible study ever.
Probably the last time, too.
Probably not. And this is harsh discipline, like the literal fire of God burns.
Right.
I have a look that my kids know, like once the switch. I'm a slow burn, right? It takes a while, but when the switch is flipped, they know
Watch
it,
out.
and they slowly back out of the room, and they're like, "Let's just go." Maybe he won't see us. God's reaction is pretty quick here. Is this too harsh?
I don't think so. I mean,
Only because it's God and you want to
well,
agree with him.
no. And I think it's funny that they go to Moses. Like, wow, we really made God angry. We should really go to Moses.
Ooh, instead of going to God.
Right. And then they're terrified. So,
Wow.
I mean, they probably think if I approach God now, he's just like that. I flipped that switch. I don't want to go anywhere near it.
Well, and then it became this thing that they remembered forever.
Yeah.
This is remember the things, the stones that they set. This is so you remember. This is we're going to remember this by names, and names are hugely important in the Old Testament.
Right.
All right, second complaint. I'm hungry. That's how they said it. All right, Miss Leah, Numbers 11, verse 4.
The rabble with them began to crave other food. And again, the Israelites started wailing and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna.
Okay, and so God does
Oh, yeah.
this is very passive aggressive. Oh, really? You don't like that? Well, then here we go.
Now the Lord will give you meat, and you will eat it. You will not eat it for just 1 day, or for 2 days, or 5, 10, or 20 days, but for a whole month.
You're going to eat it on a box. You're going to eat it with a fox.
Yes, until it comes out of your nostrils and you loathe it, because you have rejected the Lord. Who is among you, and have waited before him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt? Oh, gross.
This is an interesting play here. God's showing us some things. It's kind of like that time when I was a kid and my father caught me smoking, and he gave me a carton of cigarettes, and he locked me in the closet and said, you can't come out until you finish these cigarettes.
Oh, my.
And that's why I'm now addicted to smoking. No, that's not a true story. But it's kind of the same idea. Like, oh, you think this is tough, then let me show you.
Right.
What are they saying in the all we have is this manna? What's wrong with this complaint? Everybody gets tired of manna.
It often makes me think of the cinematic classic Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, when all they want is to rule themselves, and so all the parents disappear. And they quickly find out that it's not really what they wanted.
This is be careful what you wish for,
Yes.
because you just might get it.
Right.
God has given them something to cry about.
Yes.
Here's the thing about manna. It's awesome. They did nothing. They
Right.
just had to harvest it.
Right.
Right.
Is that
Well, and God never said, I'm going to give you a 4-course meal every day.
Right.
I'm going to sustain you. I'm
Yes.
going to give you the food you need, not necessarily the food that's going to taste the best.
so? They wanted more than just sustenance.
Yes.
Third complaint, it's not fair. And good parents say, well, the fair only comes once a year, and it usually rains. Did your parents ever tell you that?
No.
No.
Okay. It's like the fair
Yeah.
that takes the
No, I
state
get
fair.
I get the spelling,
Okay.
the nuance of it. Yeah.
It's also known as you're not the boss of me. We always do what you want to do. I wish I was never born. This is Numbers 12. Miriam and Aaron begin to talk against Moses. No, they didn't. Because of his Cushite wife, for he'd married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses, they asked? Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. And here we go.
Go figure.
God says, if you speak against my man, you're speaking against me. And Miriam gets leprosy.
I like how you just threw that
It's
away.
good.
Leprosy.
I mean, this is so Old Testament.
It
Like,
is very,
fire from heaven,
very-
something's gonna, the
Too much
ground's
meat.
gonna open up and swallow you. Oh, here's meat coming out of your nose. So what do these complaints sound like today? I want to translate these into a modern interpretation. I have Israelite tendencies, right? I have the same complaints. Life's hard, and it's not as hard for other people. Well, that's not fair. Or life is good, and I've got some blessings, but not like my vacation isn't turned up to 11 like some people's is. And my car is not brand new with all the bells and whistles like some people's are. Or even life is going great, but it's better for somebody else who we know is not as good a person.
Oh, yeah.
And their kids are on the honor roll, and they're asked to speak at this place, and you're not. And it's a hypothetical situation. And you ask yourself, what do those people have that I don't have? So what's the deal with complaining? The complaining, my thought is that complaints equal a lack of trust. And so where in your life do you make those same complaints? Are we there yet? It's not fair. What was the third one? It's not fair. Oh, wait, I missed the second one. I got to go back.
I'm hungry.
Are we there yet?
I'm
hungry.
hungry. Yeah.
And it's not fair. Where in your life, what's the modern day equivalent for you?
I think for me growing up, the it's not fair was with siblings.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Feeling like certain siblings are treated differently and given different privileges that not all siblings are given, or given different jobs that not all siblings are given, or being the only boy in a family, so you have to mow the lawn because you're the boy. Not speaking from personal, but I think that for me that it's not fair. I think I saw that a ton in my family just with siblings.
You know, they're both consistent, both sides. God is consistently providing.
Mm-hmm.
God is consistently sustaining. Maybe not in a way that's, abundant. But he's sustaining. He's consistent. But they're also consistent. They consistently forget. They consistently question. They consistently rebel. Their list of childish, not childlike, but childish tendencies is long. But so's mine. And God says, well, I'm going to go with you. Pillar of fire, pillar of cloud by day, fire by night. Here's the tabernacle. And they're like, well, we don't want to go camping. Here's the bread. And they're like, well, we want cucumbers. Nobody wants cucumbers. Okay? Nobody likes it. Pickle them and put them on a burger, maybe. Even Moses' siblings.
Yeah.
There's that
that's
sibling
pretty rough.
rivalry. They're jealous. And so they reach Kadesh or Kadesh, and it's time to play. This question of who do you trust? Who do you trust? And so Joshua, this is in Joshua 24, he gives the people of God this choice, and it's very famous. He says, but if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Why does God allow? Why does He allow us not to choose Him? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, He allows us to choose Him, but He also allows us not to choose Him. And so, what is it about God that He's saying, it's your choice?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was, something He wanted from the very beginning in creating us. He wanted us to be in relationship with Him, but it not to be forced. He wanted us to have that option because He knows that the best outcome for us is going to be in a relationship with Him. But He also knows that sometimes you have to go the opposite direction to see that.
Well, and think about how balanced this relationship is with God. My relationships always get out of balance. I discipline too much, or I discipline not enough. I give and I want to bless somebody, or maybe I'm enabling them.
Right.
You see the fine line that God walks here. I'm going to pursue, but sometimes you have to hold back. Walking that line with a sibling, with a spouse, with a child is very, very difficult because you can overdo it or underdo it in any of those things, even communication. But I used to have a rule in growing up was I could be out anywhere for almost as long as I wanted, as long as every time we moved to a different place, I needed to call. I would just call. And there were some kids that thought that was a burden. And there was one friend of mine who said to me, man, my dad and mom don't give a rip about where I'm at. And so for them, where some kids were like, man, your parents are strict. This other guy was like, no, I wish somebody was wanting to know where I was and when I was with them. So yeah, you used the right word. It's about relationship. And it's about this idea of who do you trust. So when do we find it hard to trust God? When do we find it hard to really go, all right, I'm putting my full faith in you?
I think, looking at the story of Jonah was fine trusting God until it was, now go put your life on the line and trust that I'm with you.
Right.
Go enter into something that's unfamiliar.
Jonah was fine with God until God asked him to do something he didn't want to do.
Right, exactly.
Or bless some people that he didn't want them to bless.
Yes.
Right.
Woo.
Yeah.
When do you find it hard to trust God?
I think I find it hard to trust God when I find it easier to be angry or hurt. It is hard to be positive about trusting God when I so easily want to fall back into the negative.
It's funny that you both answer that differently, and then my answer is even another nuance of that is to say, I'm okay trusting with God as long as He tells me every step.
Yeah.
But when I don't know, and there's that great scene. I think Jim was just talking about this, about the waters of the Jordan being at flood stage, and God doesn't hold back the waters until they set a foot. He wait, and I'd be like, well, if you want to part the waters, then I'll go. And that's not the relationship. The relationship is to trust when it's hard, to trust when we don't understand, trust when we'd rather be angry. And so the question is, where's your heart? Is it like these complaining Israelites? This is the worst trip we've ever been on. Think about the statement, it was better to be a slave than it is to pick up food that you don't make, to drink water from a rock, to see all the, I think we think about the Israelites, we're like, well, if I'd seen all that, I would have been the Joshua and Caleb. It's like, no, I'd probably been the jerk going, I wish I had some leeks and some onions. And so if you want to know about complaints, it always comes back to the heart. And it's a good question to ask. I think this is a great thing to ask with kids. When they're complaining about something, we'll just start asking questions. Well, do you not think that we're ever going to go someplace that you want? This is a big one for ours, is they each want to go to a different restaurant. And it's like, how many meals do you think we're going to eat between now? Like tomorrow, we'll be asking the same question, and tomorrow it will be your turn. And so God lets us choose. And I love that idea that he says, I want you to choose this relationship, and I want you to trust me. Final thoughts. I think this is a good place to end. Final thoughts about the book of Numbers. Not what you thought it was it?
Yeah, I mean, we really didn't talk about the end with the whole Balaam and
that was interesting.
curse and blessing stuff, but I think that was kind of this whole big picture that God's still working behind the scenes, where it's another.
I did like that, like as even that visual of drawing that, like you don't see it right now,
right?
Yeah.
But this isn't. By the way, I think it takes I think somebody told me it takes 30 days to walk from Egypt to Canaan. And it took them 40 years.
It said in the thing, it says 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It's a 2-week journey, and it took 40 years.
Yeah. Which sounds about right for me. You're like, yeah, probably about 40 years. Yeah. But that obstinate heart,
right?
That idea of not wanting to give in to your own will.
Yeah.
Anything else? Final thoughts?
I just loved that, again, it goes back to God is consistent. Like, He's going to let you make a choice and then show you the consequences of that choice. If you are going to choose not to trust in me, that's fine. So you're going to end your life here in the wilderness and not get to see this, because that's what you would rather do.
And giving you leprosy is always an option.
And also leprosy.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say with the Balaam thing, the thing it makes me think about is that when you turn away from God, God doesn't say, okay, well, pause on me working in your life until you come back.
Right.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to do a whole episode next week just on Balaam.
I'm just on the Balaam.
Because I thought it was the donkey guy. I was like, oh, Balaam. No, it's different. Different Balaam.
Right, different Balaam.
All right. God bless. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.